Welcome back to Bullet Basics. Today is all about background checks and going to the range. Before we get into that, I did want to mention though that we do have our, like I mentioned in the last video, we have our marketing guy starting. Probably next week is when he's going to be here, and it's going to make these videos even more entertaining than they already are. Okay, cool. So let's talk about background checks and going to the range, because this is confusing or can be confusing for people that that haven't been to the range before and are wondering. Now, we're going to assume that you're looking at this video and that you're legally allowed to. There are certain crimes and certain things that disallow you from being able to shoot guns and do whatever, be around guns really, and own guns and all that stuff. So we're going to assume that you're looking at this because you're just wondering, you're wanting to know what is entailed in going and shooting at a range. And so with that preface, we're going to move on to the content of this video. And I keep looking down because I have just kind of an outline here of what I'm going to be talking about today. Okay, so I do want to say this. There is a difference, or there's just, not really, but there's a slight difference between renting your gun and bringing your own gun. Not that if you rent a gun, they're going to run a background check, because they really don't. And I guess I should preface with the answer is no. There is no real background check that happens when you go to the gun range and shoot guns. There are some other things that happen, and depending on whether you rent or not, there may be some additional requirements or additional things that happen. But generally speaking, there's no background check when you go to the gun range at all. And so that's kind of cool, just because it simplifies the process. You can just go, you can rent guns, you can bring your own guns, have a good time, and not have to worry about it. Now, specifically, I know there are some restrictions in California and New York. Specifically, how many times am I going to say specifically? In New York, certain regions of New York have certain restrictions. I remember I've never shot in New York, or I've never even tried. Because of the restrictions there, but I have called on the gun ranges just because I was wondering and wanted to know. And several of the gun ranges that I talked to said you have to have a license, a gun license there. So whether it's a handgun or a long gun license, to be able to go to the range and shoot. And that seems to be the most oppressive, the most difficult one to go shooting at. California, on the other hand, though has some serious gun laws. I've gone shooting in California many times, and generally speaking, all they require is that you fill out their waiver just like everyone else, and there really aren't any other restrictions. Now, gun laws change all the time, so, I mean, it's May 4th, 2020. May the 4th be with you. And so it's May the 4th, and so who knows in 2020 if 2021 is going to be different, but that's what it is right now. And so California and New York would be the ones to look at, and some other ones like Massachusetts maybe as well. But in most other states, there's not really anything to worry about there. You just have to show up at the range, sign their waiver, and pay whatever fees, and that's pretty much it. And so that would be the next point, though, is that there is usually a liability waiver no matter where you shoot guns. Everywhere I've ever shot guns in the past, there is a liability waiver of some sort that basically says, you know, you will listen to the range officer. You will anything you do that is reckless or is careless, negligent, it's on you. You can't blame the gun range. Now, the enforceable nature of a waiver, I don't know. I don't know if they can be held to liability, but the point is that's what they're doing. Some of the other things, though, I do have them written down here. Some of the other things that the waiver does cover often, and I don't know if this is a requirement, but most of them do. It will ask you questions like, are you under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or medications? Are you feeling depressed or suicidal today? Are you legally allowed to be in possession of a firearm? So there's the legal question. Have you been convicted of a felony or of domestic violence, or a felony in general? It does depend, but we'll leave that there. Will you obey the rules of the range, or will you listen to the commands of the range officer? So it's making sure that you can answer those questions honestly, and if you can, then you're good to go. If not, then you shouldn't be shooting, or you shouldn't should at least shoot that day. So it all depends. And so that's kind of the main thing that you have to look for, and then you have to sign it. Usually on that same form, on that liability form, it's going to ask for an address or a phone number, especially if you're shooting alone. There's going to be a difference there. They're going to be able to contact somebody if something were to happen. But if you're with a group of people, it's just going to be a pretty simple form. It usually takes 30 seconds, maybe a minute to fill out, and that's it. And so that's kind of the main thing. So that, I guess that begs the question, or it would for me if I were looking this up. So then, when is a background check needed? And there's a couple of times, well, I guess if you're in California, it's a little bit different. You're going to need a background check when you buy a firearm and when you buy ammo. For the rest of the free states, it's just when you buy a firearm or very specific other purposes. Generally speaking, though, it's when you buy a gun. So if you buy a gun, it has to go through what's called an FFL, and that's when they'll run the background check to make sure that you are legally allowed to own a gun. If not, that's where they would catch it, and so then they would be able to stop you from buying the firearm at that point. But pretty much, I mean, most things having to do with gun ranges and stuff, it's pretty easy to go. It's not a hard process, and so if that's something that's holding you up or making you worried, I wouldn't worry about that anymore. It's pretty simple. Go. They'll give you some directions. Maybe some ranges I've been to have given directions on what exactly to expect or how to act. You know, they may have specific rules that you have to follow at that range that aren't laws, but just rules that they've found to be helpful. Other than that, it's pretty simple. So thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, let's show the YouTube algorithm that gun channels deserve to be on YouTube, and that there's a thriving audience of people that want to watch gun channels and gun videos. And that as we watch the whole video, there's two things: watch the whole video, because that shows the YouTube algorithm that, hey, you can show ads on these videos, and like, comment, do everything there is, engage with gun channels, because that is going to show YouTube that, hey, this is not somebody we want to kick off of YouTube. Other than that, if you do have any questions, leave them down below, and we look forward to talking to you in the future. We'll see you.